Dr. Bob Heil, K9EID. I want to thank you for joining us tonight, spending time with us and doing your presentation. And you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mike, and I'm happy to be here. I really appreciate the invite. I love coming to clubs and speaking, trying to share some of the science of this great hobby. I've been here for 65 years, going on 66 as a licensed ham, and it's the best thing in the world that happened to me because it was the foundation of two of my careers. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'll start off with a little bit, just a few minutes telling you where I came from and how I got here and all that good stuff. I actually started out when I was 12 years old. My parents bought me a Hammond organ. That was an expensive thing back in 1952. I'd been playing the accordion. So they figured I should do that. Well, little did I know what this was going to turn into. 2 years later, I became a professional at the age of 14, playing in restaurants around the St. Louis area. But in 1956, it all came to a head. I was the substitute organist at the Fox Theater, and that really was a big deal. And why am I telling you all of this is because this organ had not been played in 20 years. The organist there, Stan Can, he got me to become his substitute, but that wasn't the big deal. The organ had 3,500 pipes from 1 inch to 32 foot. They had
Wow.
to be voiced and tuned. Tuning, not a big deal. Voicing, oh my, because you had to really get in and listen. You had to critically listen to all the nuances, the harmonics, and so on. You see, hearing is a physical process. Everybody hears, but not everybody listens. Dissect what you hear, and it is so important for just about everything we do, and especially ham radio when you're digging out a wiki to figure out what's coming in underneath all the other stuff. Listening is a mental process. Well, and that same year, later on, that I became the organist at the Fox, I got a ham radio license. One of my high school buddies had gotten a license, so I figured, oh, that'd be a fun thing to do. I got a technician license. I was a technician for 17 years. Why? Well, because I was very fortunate that was the start, 1956, of the largest sunspot cycle ever, and 6, 2 meters, 10 meters, all the bands. They were open practically 24/7. I'd play my shows at the theater, come home at about 11, 12 o'clock at night. 6 meters are wide open, and you could just do some incredible stuff. What you're looking there is a Harvey Wells TBS 50D, an SX99. They're all over on my other AM console. The stuff behind me is all the new stuff that companies that I work for, but I still have my Harvey Wells. I was on the air this morning with it, original tubes after all these 65 years. I just love AM and I love 6 meters, but the last few years it's become very sad because it's become nothing but a contest band. They want your grid square and gone. Wait a minute, wait a minute. What kind of transmitter? What kind of antenna? How'd you get it? They don't want to talk to you. They just want your grid square and they're gone. Well, I don't have a grid square. I don't know what it is. Let's put it that way. I want to talk to you. That's what amateur radio was born on for me. So if you're looking for a grid square, you better not call me. But if you want to get on 6 meters and talk to me, yeah, let's do that. Well, a couple of years later, I got a call from the Fox Theater, said, hey, we're throwing out our PA system. It's been here since 1932. Would you like to have some of it? Well, a ham doesn't throw anything away. Of course I would. So get a big truck, go up there, and the speakers you see on the right, those are 16-foot folded horns. It's kind of hard to see how big they were. I had 4 of those, and then there were the 2 on the left. I got 4 of the A7 Altex from another theater. Got a bunch of Macintosh and Crown amplifiers, and we started building a big PA system. I'm a ham. I love doing this stuff, so I didn't know where it was going. But I had done a couple of local shows around the St. Louis area. But the Kiel Auditorium called me and said, "Hey, we got this guy coming in there tonight, 1979, 69." He said, "We don't have a big enough PA." No, they sure didn't. There was a couple of little columns about 4 foot high. Going to fill 19,000 seats? Nah, I might have been good for a bingo game, but it sure wasn't for this guy. Who was that guy? My first concert was Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, wow.
And here again, I hardly knew who Jimi Hendrix was because I was not in, I wasn't listening to that kind of music. But right after that, I met up with another guy in the James Gang, and that was Joe Walsh. And about two shows into that tour, we found out we were hams, and we have been best friends all these many decades. A lot of things, we'll get into some of that later. But here I was, thrust in the middle of all this rock and roll stuff, and Janis Joplin opened for him. And so we started building things. That amplifier at the bottom, that's one of our Omegas. It's a 400-watt amp, and the modules are the side panels of it. If you had a problem with one of our amplifiers, it came with a little carrier kit, and it had spare modules in it. And so in about 5 minutes, you could change that out, plug it in, send the bad one back to me on a Greyhound bus. That's how we did it. And we started making some pretty good noise around the industry. We were building the multi-kilowatt systems, and groups just from all over were coming to me, their managers, because they had heard about this guy in the St. Louis area. My hometown was Marissa, Illinois, 50 miles southeast of St. Louis. These are just a very few, but we were always playing around. And one of the things I did was for Joe, he had done an album with his solo band. He left the James Gang in 1971 and 72. We were playing around, putting gear together for his new band called Barnstorm. And we actually, as that, we built a lot of the group's gear, and we had a rehearsal hall there in Marissa. We had a 7,000 square foot building, so we could really help a lot of these guys and gals. And Joe had done one of his songs, his signature song, Rocky Mountain Way, and he did it with a little box that a guy had in a studio down in Nashville, Pete Drake, a little 3-inch speaker and a little bitty hose, put it in your mouth and drove that speaker with his amplifier. Of course, it was not very loud. So what are we going to do about that, Heil? Because we were putting Barnstorm together. I'd like to do that, but they're not going to be loud enough. And so, of course, two hams put our head together, and I built the first talk box. What else do you call it? And that's a 100-watt driver and high-pass filters and all that good stuff, and bingo, away we went. So Joe was happy that that was going to work. But there are a lot of English bands we were working with, about 10 of their roadies, a couple of managers and so on, moved to Marissa. My dad had restored a couple of dozen houses, and he would rent them out to people, mostly coal miners, because Marissa's in the middle of the Peabody coal. So one of them had a little gal. Her name was Penny McCall. She was going out and living with the road manager for Humble Pie. Well, she called me one day. A couple of years later, she said, "Hey, Bob, I'm with Peter Frampton now, and I need a Christmas present." That's her down in the bottom left. And she said, "Don't send him a guitar. Gosh, he's got a lot of guitars." So you know what I did. I sent her a talk box and
all right, okay, Bob Heil, Bob Heil, Bob Heil.
that was at a sound check we did.
You should know.
It was really something. Peter's the only guy that can really make it talk. Everybody else just does guttural type sounds and so on. He could make it talk. He said it took him a year to do that after he got that Christmas present from me. He He said I had to relearn the language to speak a different way so it would come out through the tube and all that good stuff. Well, my life changed about that time. I got a call from Paul Klipsch. Paul was the father of the hi-fi movement. I had heard of Paul, and here he was on the phone. "That you, Heil?" I said, "Yes, sir." "That's the Klipsch here," and I'm going, "Oh my gosh, this is like God on the other side of this phone. What can I do for you?" He said, "You the guy that's got that kilowatt sound system?" I said, "Yes, sir. It happens to be 6 kilowatt. I want to come and see it." So he got in his Bonanza, and he flew up to Marissa from Hope, Arkansas, and spent the whole day. He was much taller than I, and it was really, really fun because he's asking me, "Where'd you learn to build these amps? Where did you do this?" And of course, my answer would always come up, ham radio. "Well, no, where did you go to college?" I didn't. Because understand, if you were listening a while ago, I had a really good career playing a theater organ. And I just went to school the required number of days. I found out from the principal I had to be there, I think it was 89 days in the year. And so I would mark them off on the calendar. Stan Can, who was my teacher and my great boss at the Fox, the regular organist, he'd mark them off for me because he needed me. So that's how I got through high school. But no, my life was ham radio when it comes to education. So Paul was amazed, and of course the organ had a lot to do with it. He was also a big fan of organ. So he puts me in his airplane. We flew back down to Hope, Arkansas. And this is where everything really got changed for me. He was teaching me all the kinds of things those few days. I'm writing things down like crazy. And you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to find out about this. He's standing in front of his corner horns. That corner horn is amazing. He built that one out of plexiglass so you could show it and demonstrate it. It starts out as a 15-inch speaker, but then it's all exponential, and it comes out into a V, that room. And that allows, when you bolt it in the corner, you had to have an 8-foot solid wall this way and an 8-foot this way, and you know it's coming. Your room was the last of the 16-foot horn. And so you don't ever hear a K-horn. You experience it. It's like nothing you've ever experienced in audio. Amazing, because your room is the speaker. And he was a genius at all of this stuff. And he started the hi-fi movement back in the late 40s to 50s. That building you see was an old telephone exchange building. And he grabbed a hold of it when they vacated, and that was his lab. But he was guiding me to a lot of things. So I'm writing all this down. He said, "Heil, you got to study the early telephone system. You got to find out why it didn't work very well. It was mushy and had no clear speech articulation." And he said, "I would bet you that if you pay attention to some of this, you could cause your sound systems to be much better." Well, let's go back and talk about this telephone system. You see, they put 2 wires in New Jersey. They started, and every 500 miles across the country was a relay station. It kept the voltage up, it kept the current up, and it kept the audio flat. I mean, that's what they were after, of course. You always want flat response, right? No. In this case, it was a disaster, and they couldn't figure it out. I mean, this was a worldwide thing that everybody was looking for, and it failed. So Bell Labs put 4,000 of their scientists, yes, this is a true story, 4,000 scientists on this project. We had to figure out what's wrong, man. The 2 lead guys were Dr. Harvey Fletcher and Dr. Weldon Munson. I would really hope that some of you know about these 2 gentlemen. They played a huge part in the audio world and still do. Because what they came up with was our ears. It wasn't the telephone system. It was our ears. This is the famous Fletcher-Munson curve. Notice up there at 110, 100 dB is almost flat. Hey, that's cool. That's why kids like to listen to their music loud, because they hear all the low end, they hear all the mid-range vocals, they hear all the cymbals. But what happens down here where you are tonight? 20, 30 dB, you look like a ride at Disneyland. What they really discovered, they had to deal with 300 to 3,000 cycles. That was the bandwidth of the telephone system. But look what they discovered. 2.5K. Write it down on your forehead with a marker. I don't want you to forget this. You're going to hear about it a lot in the next hour. Here we are. What's so significant about 2.5K that Dr. Fletcher, Dr. Munson, and 4,000 scientists discovered? I don't think we can argue with them. But here's the deal. Listen intently. Remember what we talked about, listening. I'm going to reach over here to my mixer, and I'm going to take away only one thing. I have a parametric EQ, which means I can change the parameters of what my mixer has. I'm only taking out 2.5K, and here it goes. And when I take it down and get it flat, what happened? What happened? The F and the S, they're not distinguishable. The essence of sound is simply not stunning anymore. Now I'm going to bring back up just 2.5K. That's all I'm doing. I'm not turning up or down the bass or anything else. Here comes 2.5. There it is at 1500. There it is at 2000. And there it is at 2500. Now we have an essence of sound. We simply have stunning audio because our ears are screaming for that 2.5 to understand the proper essence of sound. Well, now let's look at this again, though. How wide did I tell you the telephone system was? It's 3,000 cycles wide. Isn't that like something you talk into every day? And yet, I don't see it, and I'm very appalled that the manufacturers just kind of fluff it off. Well, they can't. It was amazing, but okay, now that they discovered the problem, they had to figure out how are they going to correct this frequency loss and increase that important mid-range. They didn't have equalization. Equalization was not known for decades, certainly not there. So how are they going to fix it? Well, they fixed it with a high-pass filter. Here's a high pass and a low pass. I just put that in there for grins. All the audio comes through full range depending on the size of that capacitor. It passes it through, and then depending on the size of the resistor to ground, that takes some of the bass away. So you can equalize with components, but you can't change it. And that's how they got rid of the problem, or solved the problem, of the telephone system. Well, got to understand that in the 1920s, when all this was going on, motion picture houses were talkies. They didn't have any audio. But in 1930, they all became talkies. Because what did they do? That was what they had to back up the silence. the theater organ. This is not a church organ. It's patented as a unit orchestra. You can kind of see it there on the brass plates. 1910, this thing got its patent. Guy by the name of Hope Jones in London came over here and sold his patent to Wurlitzer. Well, that, you might say, well, that's an organ. Yeah, but it's got Steinway piano. These are all real instruments, a real marimba with little hammers over each one, a xylophones that has real trumpets, 73 of them. It's got 73 clarinets. It's got tubas and flutes and all kinds of things. There's 24 instruments in this thing, plus all of the snare drums, bass drums, foghorns. They were to simply accompany silent movies. Well, what was going to happen when talkies came in? Goodbye. But now they had a problem. RCA had the contract for a lot of the major theaters to fix it. Look at him, John Volkman. He was a very young man. He developed a system that he used in motion picture playback systems. By using some passive RC filters, as we learned a while ago, he could change things and get it right. And so this is what he would do. He would go into a theater with a new sound system that didn't sound very good, had no articulation, and he had different values of high-pass filters, and he could pick out which one, and then he'd just solder that in place. But this is very difficult for a lot of people to understand, and I mean this intently. From 1920 to 1967, the world was void of serious equalization. We didn't have any. Today, my gosh, everything you have, your Apple Watch, your Apple phone, your car, your CD, your television, everything you have, you might not know it, but the engineers have equalized it. Yeah, you might not have a bass treble control that you know of, but they had paid attention. When the engineers put all this stuff together, they know about the Fletcher-Munson curve, and they know what those 4,000 scientists discovered. Well, the only way we did it in the sound reinforcement business, by using different horns aimed at the different parts of the arena, and we could get more treble here, and that's how we equalized, so to speak. Well, in 1967, just as I was really getting into that, I had heard that Longevin, a big studio recording manufacturer in California, had come up with the very first equalizer. Oh my gracious. So I hop on a TW airplane in St. Louis and flew out to California, visited Longevin. And they showed me this. It was amazing. It had a knob at the top. You could select the frequencies. There's two of them here together. And you could then notch or boost those frequencies. What a big step forward. I said, yes, I want to buy some of that. Well, just a minute. You might want to also look around the corner, because we're building mixers. Well, the problem that we had with mixers in those days was really crazy, because all we had were mixers that came from the broadcast industry. And so they were very simple. They had, of course, no equalization. And they were just rotary knobs. It was very difficult for us to mix because you couldn't see where things were. That's what that green one is, what I mixed that first tour we did with the James Gang, and that's what we did with Janis Joplin and all these other people in the very early days. Well, what could you do? I mean, there wasn't anything else. Well, they asked me to step around the corner I might want to see this. I just about blew my mind because here was an 8-channel mixer and it had slide controls. See, it was real easy to mix. So if you had the guitar and the vocals and so on, you could just glance over and see where they're elevated or cut or boost. Very difficult with rotary mixers. I said, well, I want to get 2 of those. They said, well, we're not finished. We got one other thing. I walked around the corner and they had the prototype of that. Now, this doesn't mean anything to you because you've seen hundreds of them. In 1967, I about lost it. Oh my gosh, you kidding me? You see, I rolled off the low end a little bit and kept it all pretty much equal in the mid, but then I boosted at 2.5K. So I bought 2 of those mixers. I bought a compressor limiter that they were making and the equalizer way on the other side. I had a carpenter in Marissa, Illinois. He built that cabinet for me. Big steel legs, casters, and we could roll this thing around, and this is what we mixed a lot of big groups with then. And we were really making it happen because nobody was doing that. Heil Sound was leading the pack. But I hadn't been on the air for 12 years. I came back to radio in 76. I figured if I want to do this, I'll go get an extra class license and I'll get down on the low frequencies. I sold all of my sound reinforcement company to a company in Michigan, Holland, Michigan, bought it all. Pete Townsend bought half of it before that, took most of it, his stuff to England to help out young bands. But I had a big problem because when I left back in, I left the air and around 63 or so. Everything was great, but it wasn't. What I was hearing, I was appalled because what I was hearing is this kind of stuff. CQ. My gosh, it was all distorted, had no articulation, and but there were a few guys that had some articulation. So wait a minute, what's happening here?
Oscar Kilo 7 Alpha, Oscar Kilo.
I said, oh my gosh, I have a big situation in front of me. This just couldn't happen. But it was happening right in front of my ears and eyes. So I thought, you know what? I need to borrow a page out of John Volkmann's book. Remember John Volkmann? The guy that equalized the motion picture theaters. Only we had a little more technology by then. And so, what I did, I built a 2-band equalizer. I was on 40 meters every night with about 6 guys around the country, and they would help me make sure that I got everything right. We ended up with the low filter at 160. You can increase or decrease. You wanted to decrease. You don't want a lot of bass. It muddies things up and takes away the articulation. But where's the top? Where's the top? It's 2.5K. Yes, it is. So you can crank that baby wide open and finally get some articulation. Well, yeah, but hi, I got my matching microphone. Well, let me tell you something. I started working for these companies, and they don't build their own microphone. You've been fooled all these years. Well, it's got their name on it, and it came in the box. I don't care. I prove that it's wrong. And so this got me so fired up when I started learning about all this as I got back into the hobby. I'm going, So what I did is I wrote an article for QST. I thought, well, tell a few guys about this. It was a DIY article. I wanted people to build. Sure. I made a mistake. I put my phone number in the bottom of the parts list and the diagrams. The diagrams were great. You could build it no problem. But people saw it. No, I want you to build. We want it right now. Oh. Well, we had closed the plant. That 7,000 square was closed. So I still had some of my machines, especially my printed circuit board stuff and some of my wire cutters and drills and stuff. So I hired back two of my great solder gals, and away we went. And if you're trying to write any history, that was the first history of ham radio for Heil sound. Before that, it was all done in the sound system business. But this was the beginning, and I started looking forward to maybe helping others. But I got a call in 1999. I got a letter first from Dr. Inouye. Inouye Communications, ICOM. He had a picture of his station. It was one of the IC 781s. Remember that great contest rig? It had a scope in it, the first one. And that was actually a CRT scope. And in his station, he had his microphone, my gold line, plugged up to one of these. I got to tell you, I was stunned. Oh my goodness, this is Mr. Icon. Thinking of new radio, he wrote. Want to use your EQ 200. And so history will be there for you that from the Pro 1, Pro 2, Pro 3, all the way through to that great little 705. All of that has my two-band equalizer in it. The 705, did I put that down here? Where'd I do it? Oh, here it is. Man, I love this. Of course, they send me all these radios because they want me to make tests and do things. And this is the latest. If you don't have one of these, you need to get it. This is the greatest thing. It's a 7400 on steroids. It has 2 meters, D-star, 440, that the 74 doesn't, and it's everything else. All of the, it's got aircraft in it. I was listening to some of the aircraft here at Scott Air Force Base a while ago. It's got aircraft in it, and, you know, all of the major things, just like the 7400. This is cool stuff. But it also has my equalizer in it. So you can go in and set the tone control, bass and treble for receive, transmit, so on. It's a wonderful little box. Why I have it is it's got some really strange connectors. I don't know why they do this, but they did. That we've never seen before, so they sent it to me, and we're now building the adapters for this 705. But anyway, these are things that I ended up doing for a lot of the manufacturers, and they're always asking me questions, and so I've got all the rigs here and I can figure it out. But that was a big step in ham radio. It probably went right by you. You didn't probably even think about it. But those were the first equalizers. But you know what the problem was? Trying to figure out how to adjust it. Because you take it out of the box and you put it on the air the way it came out of the box, and that's it. Well, no, that's not it. You have to decide what you're going to do with the radio. Is it going to be for general conversation, rag chew? Are you going to do DX work? Are you going to do net control? The very first thing you do before you do anything is set the transmitter bandwidth. What are you talking about, Heil? Remember, we had that 3K bandwidth I showed you. Well, you have to set that. And here is what you have to learn. Listen to this intently. Because a lot of radios only go to 2.4. Most of them will go to 2.9, and you're saying, well, big deal. Take a listen and tell me.
K9EID, and we're transmitting at 2.9K with. This is 2.4K, and as you note, it's nice and it's articulate, but the whole bottom end drops out because of the filter network. We'll go back to 2.9. Now this is the 2.9, and it's much smoother, has much more fidelity.
And the big situation there, if you buy a proper microphone and you put it into a 2.4, you're going to call me and say, man, this microphone's terrible, sounds terrible. Doesn't sound like everybody else's. Well, everybody else that had it set at 2.9, and your radio will only go to 2.4. So you're kind of stuck. You have to think about these things when you're buying a radio. And that's why I do these things, because the manufacturers don't care. They don't tell you these things. And a lot of times the dealers don't even take time to tell you. But you want to adjust all of this stuff for proper bandwidth. That's the first thing you do. Now, if your radio is one of the new ones that has equalization, no problem. You're going to set that bandwidth of 100 to 2900. If you want less bass, do it 300 on the low end. Roll it off a little bit. Then you go into the equalizer. And you can roll off some bass, minus 2 or 3 dB, but increase that treble 3 or 4 dB. Because that treble filters at 2.5, and you know how important 2.5 is. Now, if you're doing DX work, it's a whole different ball game. You're going to set the bandwidth at 500. You're going to get rid of that bass. It doesn't do anything but muddy up your signal. And 2500 on the top end. What that does, amazing things. Amazing. I have a great demonstration. No, this is not just some kind of toy. It's a balloon. Yes, it is. And it's filled with air. Think about the air being RF, okay? You're going to set the bandwidth to 2900, okay? And the 2.5 is raised a little bit. But if you really want to punch through, you're going to narrow it up. 500 on the low end, 25 on the top end. The only gate you have open is 2.5. Look where all your power's going. You're going to be the top dog on the frequency because you're going to be so darned articulate. Is it going to sound beautiful? No, it's terrible sounding. I'm the first one to tell you that, and I'm the guy that built the first DX microphones. It's the rottenest, terrible thing you ever heard, but it puts your voice right in the middle of what is going on. So you have to understand all these things, and you can look at all the graphs you want. Here's one that shows you that 2.4 or a 2.9, but nothing helps like the one I just played for you. And when you go to set your radio, there you are, there's a 7300. What's the first thing we do? Set the bandwidth 100 to 2900. Roll off that low end and increase that treble. That's 160 hertz on the top. You can't change that. I set that for you. And the treble's at 2.5, but you can increase or decrease. That's what's important. And if you're going to do DX work, as we said, you're going to set it 500 to 2500. Go up, notch out the bass, and roll in the treble. We also were commissioned by ICOM to build a proper microphone. This does not work on Kenwood. It does not work on Yaesu. We have lots of other microphones for that. But this is specifically for ICOM because they have a very strange input. And they also have phantom power. That means they're sending 5 volts up that microphone wire to power the electric condenser. You see, the electrode has an FET transistor in it. Did you know that? They have to power it first. So they send, pay attention, this is pretty cool. They send 5 volts up the mic line, and it turns it into audio after that FET. And they take the audio right back down the same wire. So you have B plus going this way, you got AC audio going that way, all on the same wire. And it really works good if you have the right element, and that's what we did for them. And I'm so thrilled because it really makes it come alive. Well, a couple of years later, Dr. Hasagawa comes into my booth. His family owns Yaesu. Hey, I want to talk to you about that equalizer stuff. Okay, let's step out of the booth there. So, I want to do it better. Well, the only way to do it better would be to do a parametric. Yeah, that'd be good. Not so fast. Why? Well, you see, with the 2-band that I built for ICOM, you don't have to do much thinking other than increase and decrease. But all of the frequencies are set. If we're going to do a parametric, we're going to do 3 filters. Each filter, pay attention here, each filter has 3 controls. So you have 9 controls and you don't know where any of them are. And that was a big problem when Yaesu first came out with their 9000. That was my first one I worked on. I love that transceiver. It is the ultimate. And I say that because of all the many things that it has in it. First of all, they listened to me. They put balance line, XLR input, just like the broadcast transmitters. RFI is gone because we have balanced audio going in. And that's why we use balanced audio. And that's a whole nother subject. But anyway, it uses an XLR. And I took off the ALC meter. Why would I do that? Because it doesn't mean anything. ALC, big deal. No, I relabeled it microphone gain. And you adjust mic gain. You don't call up Bill, let's get on the air. Oh, Bill, oh, you're too loud. And Joe said, no, you're not loud enough. And Willie says, no, I think you're... No, that's not how you set mic gain. You set microphone gain after you adjust the equalization and the bandwidth. You adjust the microphone gain for that meter. And you never want to see it hit the peg. Oh, it'll move, but not violently. And so you want to make sure that you have that right. But that's how you set it. Well, now let's go back to that parametric, though. I told him it was going to be a problem. What be the problem? I said, education. We'll do that. Well, they didn't. I look at the manuals. I designed it for them, and I can't understand their manuals. They're just a bunch of graphs that don't mean anything. Here's what has to be done, and we do all this on our website. Welcome to a parametric equalization world. Every broadcast station in the world has a symmetric 528E. There's one right over there on my right for all my vintage gear. It has a mic preamp. It has a compression limiter. Has a de-esser. Some of the talk show hosts, they have more emphasis on their top end S's and so on. You can take that down without harming the equalization. Anyway, then at the bottom of that picture, 3-band EQ, 9 buttons. What do? It's very simple. You're going to set frequency. You're going to set the octave, how wide, and you're going to set cut or boost. That first one set at about 100 cycles, octave about 2 octaves, and I notched it a little, minus 4 or 5 dB. What's the middle one? It's sitting at 2.5K, and you saw what I did here. I want that baby almost wide open and pretty wide in its response. The top one's sitting at 6K. I'm using this on AM, so that's why, or this is what would happen in a broadcast transmitter. But you can put these wherever you need. But that was the problem. How do you go about this? Because everybody was really not with it. Well, it was very simple. This is the look of a Yaesu panel. They're all the same. Understand this. Listen to me. Write it down. Every ICOM since the 9000 all the way up to the 101 are exactly alike. They have my same EQ, parametric EQ. Just the difference is how they label it. That's why I fuzzed it all out here. Doesn't mean anything. You have 9 filters. You got the first one is frequency. I'm going to set that at 200. Going to set the level at -3. The bandwidth at 2. That's 2 octaves. What's the next one? Somewhere between 7, 8, 900 cycles. There's some kind of, it's like a boxy sound that all audio has. So we're going to set that there. 900 -3. 2 octaves of bandwidth. Where's the last one? You know where it is. 2.5K plus 8. That's how. Was that difficult? No. I don't need to look at a graph. You need to look at this, and it's on my website. There it is. All spelled out for you. You'll notice there's one at the bottom, and they're in red. All the Yaesus have 2 parametrics. But the red one only gets activated when you're in the DX mode. You don't need that. When you turn the compression on, then you have to re-equalize it all. Well, I got a little news for you. Boy, do I ruffle feathers on this one. I've only been doing this for 60 years, so I hear pretty good. You do not need compression. It distorts the audio, it muddies up the articulation, and it's crummy sounding. Oh boy, it makes it loud. No, it really doesn't. And so don't use compression. Oh, I get in some really rambunctious guys want to fight me on this one. Sorry. You see, Paul Clips turned me on to something. It's been with me all my life. The Audio Encyclopedia. You can read about what I'm talking about. You don't need compression limiting. There's 1,757 pages in this book. It's never more than a couple of arms length away here in my studio. I got something tabbed here that I got to look at. It's an amazing thing, and so if you want to argue with those guys who wrote all that, do it. Don't argue with me because I'm just following the rules. We don't need compression. Here's that bandwidth that we're talking about. You can set different bandwidths. So how wide do you want that audio filter to be? I usually set it in the green side. That's 2. That way it's okay. You can get it narrower if you want. But then there's Kenwood. They came to me. They were going to do a new transceiver and finally put equalization in them. I set up a little 6-band EQ. Nah, we don't want that, Heil. They came up with a ridiculous 13 bands. How stupid. 13 bands in only 3K, right? Maybe 2.5K. Well, you see what they did there. This is out of their manual. You roll off the low end. It really didn't punch up much of the top end. No. That's what they show you right there. That's how you're supposed to set your rig. No, you're not. You want to increase that mid-range and even increase it a little more if you want. If you have a radio that doesn't have an equalizer, there you go. And Elecraft has this type of equalizer also. Just set these components. Set to 50 minus, feather that up a little bit, come up to the mid-range, and then you go up to 2.5. It's very simple. But these are things that you really need to understand. The other side of the coin is a receiver. A lot of people don't understand about ALC, AVC. They don't understand all that. Well, take a listen to this. This is very interesting. First of all, never run your RF gain wide open. Never, ever. Take a listen what happens when you set a receiver properly.
Right now, and it's really old technology that just kind of got forgotten, and somebody like Bob or anybody else would say, I wonder about this old
Turn down the RF gain.
stuff that we
He
used to
didn't go
do
away. He actually got a little
and
louder.
apply it to a new application, and it works great.
Using
You know,
the AGC
that's very
slow.
good. I love the technical
Now here comes the fast. It pumps.
abilities that come along with this hobby.
Very
The,
important.
The technician class was truly a technician class test.
Very, very
And, I like
important
that.
to be able to lower that RF gain. I never, in all of this equipment, never ever have my RF gain more than about half open. You'll still hear the weakies because it actually takes some of the noise away. And run the AVC, automatic volume control. If you keep it fast, it's going to pump. If you do it slow, it just kind of stays there. And those are vital components of what our radios are made of. But none of this is ever taught to us. I was commissioned by the North California DX group back in 1984. After I came up with the equalizer, I started building mic elements. And they wanted me to build them the proper microphone for DX. Look at that graph. I rolled off everything under 500 starts down, but everything under 2, it's gone. And a 10 dB spike. 10. It's probably the worst sounding thing you've ever heard. However, let's take a listen here. Listen to what I'm talking about. Get this all fired up here. It's very articulate. And we don't have to do much equalization because all the articulation is done in the microphone. And so those are things that we've done to help everybody, whether a DX, all kinds of net controls, or just normal rag chews. It really works great. And our Pro 7, you can choose which type of element you have. We have broadcast elements, we have all kinds of full range, and then we have the DX. And these are for you to figure out what kind of work you're going to do. I recommended everybody watching and listening that owns an amateur radio license, everybody has one of these. You can buy them at Hamfest for $40, $50. These are $1,000 items back in the day, and they work fine. Well, okay, but how do I hook it up? There's no coax connector. Well, that's the fun part. You go to Antique Electric Supply. Please write that down. This is the most valuable website for anybody doing any work and needing connectors or whatever. Antique Electric Supply in Mesa, Arizona. You buy that little box, buy a couple coax connectors, and I used a piece of RG8 center. We're just going to tie those two connectors together. We're just passing through. But on the input side, we do a voltage divider, 51K to 600 to ground. And at the center of that is a 0.04 capacitor that feeds the little RCA jack that plugs into your scope, and away you go. It's really cool. Everybody needs it. It'll show you if you're flat topping, if you're distorting, if you got all kind of fuzziness, which is RFI, whatever. You can see a lot of things. Learn how to use an oscilloscope. We could have a whole hour on that. I'm sure you might have had other guys present just on a scope. It's a wonderful thing. And learn how to use a microphone. Well, I know how to use it. Do you? Because I hear a lot of people on the air that don't know. You see, again, I learned it from the audio encyclopedia. I learned it from all of the wonderful people that helped me along the way. What you're going to discover every time that you double the distance from your mouth, your source, to the microphone, you lose 6 dB. Think about that. Double your power's only 3. You're going to lose 6 just by doubling it. And if I get back and I hear a lot of guys like this, yeah, hey, Bill, I'm back here in my easy chair. Everything's really cool, isn't it? Well, they just turn up the gain. Yeah, okay. I don't even have a lot of gain set. I can't do a whole bunch of it, but it sounds like I'm in a roller rink. No, I hear you guys and gals doing this. It's not right. Don't do that. You can never be more than 2 inches if you want to take full performance of your microphone. And then there's a couple of other little things that we need to talk about. You want to talk about plosives. You go, what's a plosive? Plosives are people that they exhibit more air than others. And that air drives the diaphragm down into the voice coil. And it pops. Pop, pop, pop. And the only way to get rid of that, there are 2. All of our microphones come with the proper microphone shield. But it's not just a piece of foam. Don't go to Walmart and buy these things because they don't work. Because I hear a lot of guys, hey, Bill, take that stupid foam thing off. Ruins your audio. It shouldn't bother it at all. It should not do anything to your audio. Because these are acoustically transparent. And so you might as well put a sock over it instead of buying something. But don't do it. Buy the right kind. And these are all just little things that we all need to know about. And I just hate it that we don't have better things to help us. Here you go.
Yeah, copy that. Yep, okay. Makes sense. Yeah, I haven't been on as much as I'd hoped, that's for sure, but I have been on sometimes early mornings, and not the last couple, though. It actually hurt to sit here at the desk and move the mouse around, and today's not too bad.
It drives me nuts to hear that because it is so easy to fix. But there again, if you don't have that, you can also, you might notice some of the broadcasters. A lot of broadcasters, they don't speak into the microphone. They speak across it. Now you can't do that with every microphone because a lot of microphones are made, you got to keep it right here. So, great demonstration of that. In fact, it was Joe Walsh that sent me down and said, you got to build a better microphone for me. Why? Because you've seen them. They can't move off. They got to be right here. And he said, I don't like that all the time. Make one you can move around. So I did. All of our microphones. Notice what happened to the sound. It got more articulate, didn't it? And I didn't touch a thing. It's all done in our microphone if they don't. But watch the screen. I can move 180 degrees and it's still with me. And those are things that we brought to the industry. We also brought the PR40 that gets 40 dB of rear rejection. And so we just continue to bring things that really mean something to us. And the really importance of this type microphone is the power focus. You probably never heard of this before, but again, where did I learn that? A great big book. That's where I learned all this stuff, or most of it. Power focus. You see, people look at, well, that's an Omni. No, it's not Omni. Omni is all the way around, front to back. This is just on the front where it should be, as I just showed you. And we're very proud of that. But the BR40 has just absolutely massacred the RE20s and the SM7s and Shure and Neumanns. This microphone to me, brings everything we need together, and I was so blessed that I had the wherewith to do this. I gotta watch it. This thing, this gets pretty crazy. There we go. Has a lot of low end because it's the only dynamic microphone that'll get down to 28 hertz. Out to 16K, but it's got that rise at 2.5. But then I have my power focus. But then Joe said, get rid of all this stuff behind me. Watch this screen. Here's something you've probably never seen or heard unless you have a PR40. It's 40 dB of rear rejection. It's gone. Watch. Oh, it's still working. It still works, but not picking up any rears. And so because of all of that, it has become the darling of recording studios, broadcasters worldwide. You know, we're just very blessed that we can bring some of these things to you. Sirius Radio just tossed their REs and bought 250 of them. And so again, I listen to everybody and try to bring things to them that they need. Most of my headsets are all done because of the great DXers in the world, that wonderful top operators for years of the DXpeditions. They tell me what they want and we try to do it. That is why Heil Sound has been the leading supplier of operators for these guys and gals for years. But it's all about phasing. Phasing is my favorite subject. Now, if we had another hour, I do mean this, we could spend a whole hour right here. But don't get worried, I'm only going to spend a couple minutes. But it's so important to understand about phasing. You see, how did Wes Shum, when he brought single sideband to ham radio — by the way, if you don't have this book, get it. It just came out. The Amateur Radio's Unsung Hero. Wes Shum's the guy that brought single sideband to us. It was not Art Collins. He was 6 years late. This thing is an amazing story about where we all came from when it comes to single sideband. Amazing. Anyway, how did he get rid of the carrier? Did you ever think about, anybody ever ask you to think about that kind of stuff? How did they do that? Well, they did that with phasing. And how did they get rid of the other sideband? Because of phasing. Two signals out of phase cancel. Well, what's that mean to us? It means a lot. Some idiot piles on top of your frequency. You hit your notch button and he's gone. How's that work in your receiver? How's that work? Well, it works because your receiver takes his signal out of phase and he's gone. That's how you do it. So you have to understand about phasing. How does your Yagi work? Dr. Yagi didn't have any kind of equipment, back in those days. And so he came up with a wonderful idea of how he could take a boom and put a director on it, proper length, proper spacing, but he didn't know what that was. He had to experiment. So as he'd run up and down the boom with different lengths, he could find, wait a minute, one of them gets some gain. How do you do that? You get gain without batteries? Yeah. And if you put one behind longer and at the right place, that's out of phase. Whoa, that's how that works. If you haven't learned anything tonight, you're never going to forget this one. I have a great demonstration. I have two microphones. They are in phase, PR22s. I know, they're different colors, but they're the same microphone. In phase. If I bring this microphone up to this one, what do I get? 3 dB. So if you're running 500 watts and you don't have the right microphone and you don't know about articulation, you say you don't need that stupid equalization. So you're going to go get a kilowatt. You only gain 3 dB, nobody's going to hear it. You could get 10 dB by the right microphone or equalization. A little side note for you. Check this out. When I bring this microphone up to here, the meter's going to go up 3 dB. Let's see if you can listen and hear it. 1, 2, 3. What? Here, close your eyes. We're really going to listen now. Dissect what we're hearing. I'm going to take away a kilowatt. 1, 2, 3. The human being ear cannot detect 3 dB unless you were in some echo chamber. That's just a little side note I throw to you. Well, I have this magic little plug. I'm going to plug it in here. And pin 3 is hooked to 2. Pin 2 is hooked to 3. Okay, big deal. Well, Heil, it sounds exactly the same. Yeah, it does. There's only one problem. This is a Y cord, by the way. So we can use two mics into one input. Here we go. This microphone is in phase. When I speak into it, the diaphragm is driven down. This one is out of phase. And when I speak into it, it comes up. Well, it still works okay. Yeah. 2 signals out of phase cancel. Watch and listen. This could be another one of those crowning moments you won't forget because it affects everything we do. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, they still work, but not together. They cancel. And there's just so many things about it. I got into building a lot of different antennas, and some night I come back and we'll get into some of that stuff because it can be really interesting. I built some phased arrays. I have some great audio demonstrations, video demonstrations, and we should look into those some night. And they're just all types of things, phased dipoles and how we switch all this stuff and so on. And again, you don't hear or read about this, and I don't know why, because it really, really means everything you do. But here's what I want to leave you with. I read a thing years ago about Art Collins. Art had made a bold statement, and you certainly are not going to argue with Art, that a signal transmitted and resonant, notice I said resonant, you do not speak to Bob Heil unless you have a resonant antenna. That's very important. You don't need all these tuners and all that nonsense. You want a resonant antenna. Elevated at a quarter wave above ground are as close to 100% efficiency as possible. This is Art Collins. Most transmitting antennas of resonant dimensions elevated at a quarter wave above ground are as close to 100% efficiency as possible. Well, how do you do that? Here's how you do it. We know it has a direct ray, but it's got a reflected ray. And it's your job to bring that directed and reflected ray together. And you do it by the proper elevation. When I first got on the air in 76 as a electric class, I ran into a bunch of characters on 40 meters, and I had one in California, one in New Orleans, one in Florida, one in Parma, Ohio, and one at Cedar Rapids. He was at the Collins plant. Every night we'd be on. And every night I would have a different antenna at different heights. And I wanted to create what we just read. I wanted to see if that worked. I had a resonant dipole on 40 meters. We also had a reference antenna also that we could compare things. And guess what? I had it 20 foot. I went to 40 foot. Wouldn't that be better? Yeah, it's higher. Then I went to 50. But I came back to 33 foot high. Guess what? It was stronger than the one at 50. Really? Because of that reflected ray that Art Collins was talking about. So you see, higher is not always better. But there are so many things we can talk about. But you can mark this down in your book and you can't argue with me. There's nothing like a resonant dipole. Nothing. You can try all you want. And if you want to do a 80 and 40, you can put some traps in it. That works great. But there's just so much to talk about with antennas, and we don't have time. We got to start getting out of here. What are we going to do about the receiver? Well, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes and tell you what I did. I really tried my best to get the manufacturers to do something. But no, they're going to hang on with their junky little 3-inch speaker, and all of them. Every transceiver. I work for these companies, all of them. Every one of them only has 1 or 2 watts at 10% distortion. Trust me, you've never seen a spec sheet on a receiver audio because they're embarrassed. They figure you're good enough. No, you're not good enough. We deserve more, and so I did it. I borrowed some great things I learned from Paul Klipsch. Look at the magnets on that speaker. That's a 5-inch speaker. And we took it out into free air, did a cone resonance. I wanted to know what the resonance of that cone was. Paul taught me how to do this. Then you treat the cabinet to that resonance so that there's no standing waves, no distortion. The speaker cone hardly moves. And then we have a 3.5-inch tweeter. The amplifier, you see, is 25 watts. 25 at 0.1. 0.1% is hi-fi level or better. That's what I wanted to do, and boy, is it great. Balanced line input, XLRN. But then I did the ultimate. I built the equalizer for this. It's a parametric equalizer in the mids. But what's so great about this, and I didn't realize what was going to happen exactly when I built it, because I first had built this stuff for me. There's 2 headphone amplifiers. These are separate lines. They're not just Y-corded together like some of the other guys. No, this is the big deal right here. And you can have the logger here at his level. You can have the operator here at his level. But something that has really taken hold, you can plug the left side headphone here and the right side here. And if you have a hearing imbalance, this is your godsend. I cannot tell you how many letters, emails, and phone calls I get. People saying, thank you for giving me my radio back and my television. We had a ton of these being used on televisions. This is another line out, only that's at record level. You take a cable here and plug it into your computer, and you can make some really nice recordings. But here we go. We have a high filter at 6K plus or minus. We have a low filter at 160, and you can notch that a little bit. And of course, then the output level. Let me crank this up over here. Let me, what did he know? So you hear this guy.
Hope I have it right. Very good day
So
to you
you
from
hear
Ireland. Name is Liam Lima, India, Alpha Mike, over. Hello,
Here's the way you hear him.
CQ 20 meters. Echo India 8 Bravo, Lima Bravo.
The way you hear it.
BI-ATLB calling about.
Here are a couple of usual single sideband signals that are mushy and bassy, difficult to understand. But you can add some speech articulation just by adding some 2.5 mid-range.
Ability of the 2 meter, sideband, but they're just not, it's not the same as a rig built, just for 2 meter sideband. The receivers will never compare. So it's kind of nice that, again, ICOM technology.
And there's just no argument about this. This thing is so useful. And we're so thrilled because there's just nothing like it out there. And I'm very happy that we can bring things that help all of us, me included. So that's just a little bit of some of the things that we're really thrilled about. One thing that you might want to do is go to your dealer and get a hold of my book. This book is, it's got a lot of stuff in it. I didn't write it, I just compiled it from a lot of my mentors. One of my great mentors was an engineer at KMOX Radio. I met him a second week on the air. He was amazing to me. And we were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a few years back. We're the only manufacturer in the Rock Hall. Everything else is the artist. But they said, you know what, none of these guys would be here if it wasn't for the gear. They selected us because of all the special things we did. I'm standing in front of a console that I built for The Who. It's a quadraphonic console, so we could do quadrophenia in 4 corners of an arena. We did that tour for 2 years. On the back side of that is a mixer we built for ZZ Top. Monitors. We were the first company to come up with monitors. They didn't feed back. How did I do that? They were out of phase. And of course my talk box. And a few years ago I was awarded an honorary PhD at Mizzou University. And these are all things that's way beyond a kid that barely got out of high school. But it's all about ham radio. There's nothing that has taught me anything like what I've learned. And I learn every day. I mean, if you could see my workbench over there, I got a transmitter all torn apart. I'm having trouble. But I tell you what, by midnight tonight, I will have it fixed. You should have some questions. Let's see what you got for questions.
Somewhat alien question, Bob. Will you be participating again with Route 66 on the air?
Oh, I didn't. Let me do that again. I think you said something about Route 66. There we go. Now do it.
I was wondering if you will be participating with Route 66 on the air. I've spoken with you a couple of times during that event, and I was wondering if you'll be back.
Oh, yeah. We had a home down in the Ozarks for about 8 years. Sarah's mother lived there, and it was a second home, but we have 5.5 acres, and I come back and we'll play some of the things we did for you, the experiments we made with the phase stuff. But anyway, yeah, and it was in Springfield, Missouri. That was the mothership. That's where Route 66 started. And so I got them involved in all of that because they weren't on the list. But yep, I'd be there. I don't do contesting, but I do that because I love it. So thanks for asking that, and we'll see you there.
Absolutely.
Bob,
Yes, sir.
I hope you can hear me. I'm off on microphones on my camera.
I can.
Okay. I have here your headset, the Pro Set. Used it for several years. I just love it. But the small foam insert that goes in, my ears are stick out too far, I guess. And it has worn a hole through that, and it's no longer comfortable.
No problem. We have every part. What you want to do is call the factory, talk to Donna. She's my service director. She has been with me for 26 years. She is, all through these years, she probably built your Pro Set. She builds stuff. Of course, she knows how to fix it. She's an amazing lady. And we have other guys, Tim and Derek and Jerry, all these people. They'd be glad to help you. Call, don't email, just call and try to get a hold of Donna, and she'll take care of you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Bob. This is Philip. It's not a question, but just would like to share with you. I'm a big fan of your products, and I use your microphone with my ICOM, and I love it, and I get a very great radio report. So thank you for all you do for us.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
I've got a question. I too have one of your headsets I use with my ICOM, and I don't know if you can see Ron K9EID his video right now, but when I first got it, I kind of had it configured that way. I had the element, I guess, right up kind of next to my mouth, thinking that I wanted to turn the gain down as much as possible so I didn't get background noise in the house and have it kind of close to my mouth. But I've been told that I should instead, and I heard you say we should talk at an angle to a microphone. Yeah. I've been told it should sit straight out, kind of even with my mouth, but pointing kind of 90 degrees to where the air is blowing out of my mouth. What's the right way to use that thing?
There's no question about it. You really shouldn't speak into it. You should speak across a microphone for the headset especially. You want to be across, and that works best.
Okay. I'll do that. I'll play with turning off the compression, and because that when I do that, I've got it pointed right at my living room where my kids are watching TV and that sort of thing, and I'm picking up a bunch of noise. But maybe if I turn the compression off and turn that gain down, I can just talk a little louder and get a better sound.
What kind of transmitter?
It's a 7300.
A what?
ICOM 7300.
Oh yeah. And did I hear you say you had the compression on?
I do. I've got it at 5 or 6.
Turn it off.
Yes, sir.
That is why you're picking up the whole damn room.
Yeah.
I don't know why people don't understand that. It's a scourge to the industry because guys, it's going to make me louder. Yeah, but it picks up every cricket around the block.
Well, I'll admit to not knowing what I'm doing. I'm a bit of an amateur musician, and I did record an indie album at home, but know nothing about recording. I kind of was learning that on the fly, and if you listen to what I recorded, you can kind of, it's pretty evident. But I ran across a self-proclaimed audio expert out on the HF bands who walked me through setting that thing up and told me, oh, you've got the 7300 and this microphone, here's what you need to do. And I listened to him, and he told me I sounded 1,000 times better. But yeah, I'm going to go back to the drawing board and watch this recording again and do what you told me.
No, you don't need all that nonsense.
Bob, I've got two questions for you. I'm an old broadcaster.
Here's one of your mics that I've used a long time ago that has my call on it, and I want to thank you so I can leave this to my grandchildren, and they can remember their old man being on the radio. So I've always used your mics, and I want to thank you.
Oh, very good. That was a fun microphone. Yeah, great.
Yes.
Great.
Bob, I'm an old broadcaster, and I've got two questions for you.
Yeah.
One, there was a device came out, probably in the mid 70s, maybe early 80s, called the Optimod, which seems to be the lifesaver of FM.
Yep.
And the other is, can you speak a little bit to it? And the other is, can you speak a little bit to room acoustics?
Well, the Optimod was built for FM radio, and it has a very, very good microphone preamp and some equalization in it. It has a tinge of compression. You didn't have to use much, and it really was a lifesaver, mainly because of the really high quality mic preamp and equalization. That was really
well. We used it at the transmitter.
Yep.
It was already program was put together.
Okay.
But the word was we had to be the loudest station in town. And I actually saw a very good chief engineer lose his job because somebody else was louder. Sad.
Well,
you know anything about program managers?
I do. I was at KMOX for 25 years on air. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm Keith in M5G. Can you see this?
Let's see where we're at. I'm not seeing everybody. Try it again.
I think I'm.
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Let me choose my.
Yeah. BR40.
Let me turn it off. Yeah, you can see it better now.
Yeah.
This was connected to my 9000D Yaesu.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the paramedic equalizer and all that stuff. And everybody said, you sound great. Lightning destroyed that transceiver. And I just can't let this go. I'm not sure what I should use it for.
Do you still have the 9000?
No, it was proclaimed dead from Yaesu.
Mm.
So I collected insurance on it.
What kind of transmitter do you have today?
I got a pair of 7610s, ICOM.
That should work okay. You're going to have to crank the audio gain up a little bit, but we have a cable that will connect that XLR into the ICOM.
So XLR into the ICOM should work okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
By the way, I got
send me an email and I'll help you set it up if you need.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, good deal.
Hey, Bob, I just have a couple of comments.
Yes.
My first comment is about Dayton. Being from Houston, we don't get to Dayton very much, or I don't. I've been there about 7, 8 times, and one of the highlights was always going to, at the Hare Arena, always going to Audio Row. Yes. And you would always be out there just chatting with all the people, and I'd just stand off to the side and listen. It was so entertaining. It was one of the highlights of going to Dayton. So then the other comment I had is that my son went to SLU, and he lived in Belleville. Oh. And I would go out to visit him, and every time I'd pass through Fairview Heights, I'd see your little store off on the left side. I must have gone there 5, 6 times. Never was anybody there when I came by. I'd knock on the door and nobody was ever there. I just wanted to stop in and say, hey,
There's always somebody there from Monday to Friday, but not on the weekend.
It was just the off hours. It was kind of uncanny. I'm going, man, what is going on here? Anyway, I knew where you lived, so it was
What's
okay.
funny about that little house you saw, it started out as a little house. It's now 10,000 square foot behind it. But
no kidding.
We like it. We like it that way. So
yeah. That was great. It's like just driving down the road and there's Heil. Holy moly!
That's
good
where
stuff.
The magic happens. Yeah,
that's right. Thank you, Bob. Really appreciate it tonight.
I built this studio. It's been 6 or 7 years ago. when we left the Ozarks, of course, this has been our home forever. This was a 4-car garage with a 20-foot high ceiling. I used to have a collection of small Thunderbirds, and I had lifts on here so I could keep 4 of them in here. Anyway, I got rid of those in 2000, and I built this studio in this. All of the walls are not parallel. There's not a parallel wall into place. I had a real tough time with the contractor telling him what I wanted to do. The ceiling is cranked, each wall, that wall back there, and that's because of my theater organ and any of my audio stuff. And then on the wall is a material, it's almost like carpet. And so that's some of the acoustics that you have to do. You think about, when you go into a theater today, you ever think about, why is the floor always slanted? And if you look, they have slanted wall. Why? Because of standing waves. And well, you're going to say, well, what's that about? Here's what happens. When I speak into this microphone, well, it doesn't stop there. It goes up and hits the wall. Now, if that wall is parallel, it'll just go back and forth, and you get this weird thing. But if it's not parallel, angled, you're going to hit it and it's going to go somewhere else, not back in your microphone. That's why we build recording studios with these odd shapes and all of that. And that's what I did here. Somebody asked me a while ago about acoustics, and that's how you do it. And I'm really happy with this. This thing really works great.
Anechoic.
I'm sorry?
Anechoic.
Yeah. Well, not quite anechoic, but I borrowed a few things from them, right? Yeah.
So I have a question. Is that PR-77 behind you?
Mm-hmm.
It is, isn't it? That's beautiful. I've never seen it in purple.
Yeah. This is a great microphone. Yep, I love this microphone. You gotta watch it. It got a lot more gain. Yeah, I love using it, and when I do my recordings, this is usually what I use because it's really good to record some of my my pipe organ stuff.
Yeah, that's a beautiful microphone.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Copy.
Tell me about the organ you have at the home there.
I'm sorry?
Tell me about the organ you have at home.
Okay, glad you answered that. I've been playing the Wurlitzer for years. I've had 2 of them in different locations. I had one in a restaurant for years, but I had one at my home before I left my parents years ago. But I don't have room for that. I don't have time.
Oh,
a
shucks.
real pipe organ is just a mass of things that can go wrong. Thousands of little air solenoids. And I think about this, you have little hammers above each of the bars on the marimba. Each one of the pipes, and there's 3,500 to 4,000 of them, they have little air solenoids that open and let air go up into the pipe. On and on and on.
Cypher City.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Allen, Oregon came up a few years ago, like about 12. They came up with sampling. And they got George Wright, who was the guy.
Yes.
And I followed George for years. Very, very honored to know him. And I hate it that he passed away early. His protege was Lynn Larson. Lynn traveled around to 24 different theaters around the country. He knew where the best bass trumpets, he knew where the best pianos, the best flutes were, and they sampled that. They sampled 24 different organs and all the other things. They built a console that is absolutely a Wurlitzer. And what has to happen there, it has to be exactly like when you go to make fast changes, you don't have to think about where's the trumpet, it's right here. You can close your eyes and see where's Where's the piccolo? It's over here. So when you build a true theater organ, you have to do all that if they're played by any kind of people that know what to do with them. But this thing is amazing. It has, you can't see them, but up above happens to be 10 speakers, a pair of subwoofers, and let me unplug this. I started out with George Wright's, the one that George did, but then they came along with Lynn's, and let me get up here. Lynn is actually, his instrument is better, really. I think I can show you this. I got a switch here. There we go. I think I can do this. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. No is not in my vocabulary. There are all the speakers up there. They're up over my head about 15 feet. And there's this solo chamber, there's all the subwoofers, and then the main chamber is over here. And of course, they're all keyed from the console. There's right at about 3,000 watts in this thing, but it's really great. I'm glad you asked that, because this is how I end all these. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to play a little tune, and then you guys can hit the old button to make me go away. If you'd like to hear a couple of minutes, I can do it.
Can you play for some Vidor for us?
Do what?
Vidor?
No. I'm
Can I sneak in one more random question before you go?
Sure.
Have you ever met Mark Mothersbaugh?
Who is it?
Mark Mothersbaugh was the lead singer of Devo, owns Mutato Musica now.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I think you guys would get along famously. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Okay.
Hey, Bob, I got a question.
Sure.
Were there any musicians you run across over the years that were also in tune to what you were doing? I mean, Joe Walsh was one, maybe Pete Townsend. Were there others that were on the same page as you, that were very interested in what you were doing?
No. Pete was an amazing guy. He is an amazing guy.
Yeah, he is.
Still a good friend. We talk quite a bit. I have a program that I do. I have so many things. I've been so blessed, and I have a whole thing that I do with Pete, and how I got together with him, and then I have visited in his studio, and how he came up with Baba O'Reilly, and we helped him with some of those things. And
oh, nice.
You know Baba O'Reilly? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, very well.
You know the da-da-da-da-da-da-da thing?
Yeah.
What do you think that was played on?
What I'm looking at in your picture?
It was played on a little bitty $900 Lowry home organ.
Oh, wow. Oh, I think I read that somewhere. Yeah.
What he did with it is he plugged the tone generator of that into a synthesizer to get the da-da-da-da timing down.
Mm-hmm.
But you can imagine he and I, we go crazy when we get together. And the same thing with Walsh. I mean, I moved to California some years back just to be with him, because he was going through some situations, and so we had a second home out there, and we'd sit in his kitchen table and talk about things and do things, and he was a great help in designing a couple of my microphones. But these are all great, talented people, and amateur radio is really something for Joe. He's quite something. But
and now Joe's a TV actor on the Connors show.
Yeah, he married Ringo Starr's sister-in-law. He and Ringo are brother-in-law. Think about that for a minute. But he's kind of backed out of all this. He's become with the Hollywood group, and so he's not on the air much or anything like that, but he's still out there doing stuff and having fun.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, you're
Well,
not
thank
going to retire anytime soon, are you?
Yeah, go ahead.
You're not going to retire anytime soon, are you?
I didn't hear that. What?
You're not going to retire anytime soon, are you?
Oh, hell no. There's a rumor out there that I did retire, and I want to know who the hell started that one. My wife retired, but no, I'm still doing it. Her son, and he's kind of taken over her position. And brilliant, brilliant kid. And some of the others have been with me for many years. But, oh, no, I can't do that. I got too much I want to do.
Hey,
Well,
Bob, I just wanted to thank you for being able to help us in the hobby, like offering your, being able to email you and get a response, like you told Keith. And matter of fact, I emailed you this morning and had an answer back this afternoon, and haven't implemented any of that yet, but I just wanted to thank you for being so accessible.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was at the plant this morning, and I didn't get back home till later. But we're here, and I'm so glad to do it. Let's come back. Pick a subject. Antennas, or what's it like to travel with the Who? That was, I lived with them for 4 years. That was something, especially Keith Moon, but that's another story.
So I have one more question for you.
Go.
Do you still have a copy of your original Heil talk box?
Oh yeah.
I just wondered if you've hung on to it all these years.
Well,
because I think you came out with that in what, 71 or 72?
72. It's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
That's who has it now. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And I didn't give it to them, so I'll get it back someday.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
That was
actually
very...
there were 5 of them that I built.
Wow.
Because I was just goofing around. And there's one there, and there's another one in another. It's a St. Louis has a thing on there in their history museum because of the local companies, and Townsend has one, or not Townsend. Joe has one. He has number 2 actually, and then Frampton has the other one, and that's where they all are.
That's what I thought, because you did it for Walsh first, didn't you?
Oh yes, it was Joe and I had to figure it out. Yeah.
That's what I talked to him one day on the radio when I was in New Braunfels still, when he was still on the radio. And he said that I thought he told me he had your number 1. But
he does.
He does have your number 1. That's what I thought.
Yeah, he has the first one.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. Okay, guys and girls, this has been fun. Let's do some more. I'm always here for you.
Bob, do you get on the air very often?
Yeah, I'm on every morning on 3885, right in the middle of the AM window. Oh, yes. And I get on at night down on 36, 10, 20. There's some guys down there. I get up on the Friendly Network up at 3900. And, yeah, I get around. Absolutely. I love it.
I'd like to listen for you sometime, maybe talk to you on the air.
All you got to do is send me an email sometime. Say, hey, I'm going to be on whatever frequency, and we'll see if we can't make it happen.
All right. I appreciate that.
You can do that. Okay, guys, let's see what happens.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Amazing, Bob.
Incredible. Incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do the presentation. And I feel like we got dinner and a show. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the great information. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to talk to our club. Very much appreciate it.
Okie dokie, anytime. As I
Yes,
said,
thank you.
subject-
Thank you for sharing. Sharing all of your knowledge.
I bought one of your microphones for my nephew's recording studio, and I've never even thought about having one of your microphones for my ham radio rig, and I feel embarrassed. I have to have one now.
If you have anything at all, any questions, email me. I'm always here for you. That's what I do most of the day. Just send me an email, my call at ARRL, and we'll get together on Skype or Zoom or a phone call or whatever. I'm always here for you.